Greetings YouTube! So you've been learning to sew for a while. You're learning all the different hems and seams you can do, and things seem to be going along just fine until suddenly your thread is breaking, your thread is bunching underneath your fabric, or your machine is skipping stitches. These are all common problems, easily fixed. Now obviously sewing machines have a lot of moving parts, and if one little thing is out of alignment, things are going to go wrong. So let's take a look at the common sewing machine problems and how to fix them. The issue could be as simple as incorrect tension or stitch settings. Do a test to make sure your settings are correct, and if the problem persists, there could be another culprit. One of the most common issues is breaking thread. This can be caused by a number of things. You could be using the wrong thread for your project. Make sure you're using a finer thread for finer fabrics, and a thicker thread for heavier fabrics. It could also be that your main thread and bobbin thread are different sizes. I always make sure to wind my bobbin from the thread I'm going to be using. Then I can be sure my threads are matching. Also make sure you're using sewing machine thread. Some thread is only designed for hand sewing. It's too weak for the sewing machine and will snap. It could be that the machine is incorrectly threaded, so thread your machine again, make sure it's threaded correctly. And make sure the bobbin's threaded correctly and that the case is in properly and not rattling around. Make sure the top thread comes through the slit on the foot and that both threads are pulled to the back. If there is any resistance or tugging as you pull either thread, then it's not threaded correctly. And if all that fails, you could be using the wrong spool holder. If you're using a cross-wound spool, this goes on the horizontal holder, and a circular spun spool goes on the vertical holder. Another common issue is bunching up of thread on the underside. Not only does it make your project look messy, it can also be very irritating if the threads or fabric gets pulled into the machine. Again, many culprits can cause this issue. It could be that the machine isn't threaded correctly, so try threading that again, and making sure the bobbin is threaded correctly, and that the case isn't loose. Make sure that both threads are pulled to the back. Make sure the presser foot is down, and it's quite common to forget to put this down. This can cause threads and fabric to be pulled into the machine. I still do it after more than 30 years of using sewing machines. Whenever we finish sewing, make sure that we bring the take-up lever to the top position so that whenever we thread the machine or begin sewing, it's in the correct position. Another common issue is skipped stitches. First, make sure that you're simply guiding the fabric and not pulling or tugging, because that can lead to skipped or inconsistent stitches. It could be that your needle is dull or bent. Because the needles are so small, it's not always obvious if the tip is bent, but a good rule of thumb is to change the needle after around 8 hours of sewing. Another reason could be that the needle isn't in correctly. So when you change the needle, make sure it's pushed up as far as it will go before tightening the screw. And it could also be that you're using the wrong needle. A standard or universal needle works with most woven or knit fabrics. Make sure you're using the right size. A smaller size for finer fabrics, and a larger size for heavier fabrics. Also consider specialty needles for different kinds of fabrics. A jersey needle for stretch fabrics, or a denim or heavy-duty needle for thicker fabrics or projects with many layers. If we've done all of those things and the problem still persists, it could just be the machine. It's a good rule of thumb to do regular maintenance on the machine. I'll be doing a video later in the series, but you can always check your machine's instruction manual. It will have sections on troubleshooting and maintaining the machine, keeping it running smoothly. It could also be that something in the machine is out of alignment and needs a service or repair. If you're sewing and you feel the machine tugging, or if you hear any strange noises, like clunking, crunching or buzzing, just stop sewing. There are plenty of shops and individuals out there who offer sewing machine maintenance, repair and servicing, but of course if you're mechanically confident enough, you can do it yourself. Well, I hope you guys have found that helpful, and now you and your sewing machine can get along better. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!